Welcome to Abode with Afta, the podcast where we step inside real homes and uncover the stories behind the renovations. I'm your host and interior designer Ashley, and I'm speaking with homeowners and industry experts about what it really takes to transform a house. Hi and welcome back to the Abode with Afta podcast. Today we are already on episode 8, which I can't believe. I feel like the weeks are just flying in with these episodes. So it's another solo one today. Before I get into it, I do want to ask you again, are you enjoying the podcast? I would love to hear your feedback so far. And if you are, please hit that like and subscribe on our channels. So before we get into today's episode, I thought I would do a little update on what's going on behind the scenes at Afta, what we've been working on at the moment. I've got some really good news over the past week. We have had our building warrants submitted for the Soul Coats project. If you've been following me on socials, this project has been going on forever. Basically, this is a property that I bought personally in Soul Coats. Now, it was started off as a commercial office, and my plan is to put it through into a 2-bed residential. So there's like a conversion for change of use in there, which I thought was really interesting. It's something that I've not done before, and a bit of space planning involved, because right now it's just like 2 really derelict rooms, and we're putting 2 bedrooms and living spaces and all that into it. So this project has definitely ran over time frames. I kind of thought it would be done by now, but like, it's just the way it is. But I think because it's my own project, you don't prioritise things. And I actually done my own planning permission for this, which is kind of the reason why I chose it, so that I could learn things on the job. But I did decide to get an architect in to help me with the building warrant. So that has been submitted, so that will probably take 6 to 8 weeks to go through. And right now I am just working on the design work and getting quotations in for it. So that is a bit of good news going on behind the scenes at the moment, as well as other projects. But let's get into today's episode. So this isn't quite an interior deep dive, but it's a question I get asked a lot, and it's how did I end up being in the interior design industry? So my personal story, and I've shared this a few times online before, but it's been a while since I've done that, so I thought it was maybe time for, a bit of an update. And for those who are maybe listening to the podcast so far, a little insight to me and how I came to be Ashley.Afta and podcast and business and all that, which has really just been a development over the years. But if I start really right back at the beginning, like back to school days, so I was always really good at art and graphics. I seemed to really excel in them, like without trying, because I enjoyed them. And by the time I got into like your higher, so like 5th and 6th year, the subjects I still really, excelled in. I actually skipped the higher graphics and just done advanced because I got good grades the year before. But as well as I was doing that and skipping, a level there, I also failed my higher maths twice, failed higher English twice, failed others as well. So like, going off my grades, it was just really obvious that I should pursue a career in a creative industry. And that's kind of what I wanted to do anyway. I knew that I was always had that streak in me. I actually always say it comes down to being an only child. So when I was a kid, I had to entertain myself, and that came through doing art and things like that. So the creative streak has always kind of been in with me. And leaving school, I then went on to do a graphic design course. So they offered this at AIR. I toyed between the graphic design and interior design, and I just chose AIR. I think it was more because of travelling. I'd probably just newly passed my test, and it just seemed easier to get there for me. But the course was okay, but I just knew that when I was there, I didn't love it. So I actually left that course after 6 months. I didn't actually tell my mum, and then I walked in one day and after work, because I took on a shift, and she says, "What are you doing here? You're meant to be at college." So I got caught out for that one. So yeah, I left graphic design, and then the year after, I, like the end of semester or school terms or college terms, I ended up enrolling back into interior design and architecture. So that is a course that was offered at Reed Care. So that's, I think it's west of College Scotland now, and that's where I went after that. So that was a 2-year course, and I swear to God, I absolutely just fell in love with interiors, architectures. I loved everything about it. The projects that we got to work on were really diverse. I think the college was just amazing. They done a lot for you as a student. Like, they had live projects, so we had, like, did work with IKEA, we did work with Kepi Design, which is an architecture firm in Glasgow. There was a few others in there as well, and I just felt like the lecturers as well were really great. They were there for support. But what I learned, through the college was you learned all your technical skills there, so, and that's stuff that I still use today. So like your CAD, SketchUp, which is a 3D design software. We also learned another one, 3D Max, which is it does produce slightly different kind of style of renders. I think because I already learned SketchUp, though, I just never really picked it up. But SketchUp is something that I still use today, and college really taught me the blueprint really of how to structure a design and a process. So that comes from like starting your initial brief, and then milestones as your project developments happens, how to come up with concept ideas. It was really creative based, so everything was ideas, and they gave you kind of mock-up briefs or things like that, and you were really designing specifically to answer that brief. A big thing I should actually say here is I was maybe in a class of like 20 or 25, and even though everybody had the same brief, everybody came up with something completely different, and that comes from like your own personal style starting to come through, or things that you've seen outside that you want, or kind of tastes that you want to delve into deeper. So that's really interesting that you could have the same brief but people come up with different things. So I absolutely loved college. We actually done a few competitions there, and one of them we did with IKEA, and I came third in that. So my work got displayed in IKEA for a year, which was really good. And again, I felt like I wasn't really trying and things were just happening. So I knew that I was kind of in the right industry. And what they actually came back to there was that I really understood the brief. So I was designing for the mock-up person that they had kind of explained to us, which is why one of my project got picked. So that's something that's really stuck with me, and it's not just about the design work, it's like, how do you listen to the person and their needs and what they're looking to get out of their space, and that's something that I still really take with me today. So college was an absolute blast, and then leading on from college, I then went on to uni. I applied to a couple of unis. So I applied to Dundee and I applied to Heriot Watt. I didn't apply to GSA. I just felt like it wasn't really for me. Dundee was a bit more further away. It's something I'd had to move away for. So I eventually just chose Heriot Watt because I had a job back home. And I felt like, that would be easy. It was a bit of a distance to travel, but it would be easier to manage and still be able to work back here. So, to kind of pay for things. And uni was okay, actually. I feel like because I had such a great experience at college, once I got into uni, it wasn't the same. Like, it was very hands-off because you were in less and the travelling time. I feel like maybe because I didn't move away, I didn't get that like uni student culture, so I kind of missed out on that. But I don't know if that's like at Heriot Watt, they did it at two different places. So you were in Edinburgh and then you were at Galashiels. So people were really travelling from all over, and even people that moved there still had to travel to the other place. So I did meet a couple of friends from there, but it's not something that like is continued as much. But it was really good to meet people who came from other colleges and see what they were working on. Other colleges kind of use different softwares as well, so really good to see what they were working on before and meet people who are at the next level. Because from the college, because that's an interior architecture like qualification. Some people use that to then go into architecture. Some people used it to go into interior design, and then other people used it for things like going into like CAD specific subjects, like at uni level. So from that college course, you could really go into like loads of diverse subjects. So there was only a few of us that then filtered through, but like I said, we met people from other colleges there as well. So that was good. They done a lot of, it wasn't really like live projects with like businesses as such, but you did live projects with other subjects, you would say, in the uni. So I remember we did this one project and it was like a pop-up like fashion kind of thing. So they had us as the designers, but then they also had like students in textiles who were doing the fashion. And I think we also had somebody there from like a graphics or branding perspective to do like a logo and things like that for it. So you did work collaboratively on the types of projects. And the big thing I noticed about uni was like you've obviously learned all your skills and that how to structure a project at college. So they weren't really teaching you that, but the projects were getting bigger. So rather than just working on like one space or one themed kind of area, like we did do big stuff in college, like airport design and things like that. But once you got into uni, it was more like multi-generational living projects. So we were going out to see like old listed buildings across Edinburgh, and you know, how can you turn these like old, I don't even know what kind of buildings you would call them these days, but I can't remember off the top of my head what it was we went to see, but it was like, how do you change these into multi-generational living complexes? So that was things like, you know, places that are suitable for like families, but also like having places for the elderly. So that meant you had to consider like disability access. The projects were always listed, so there was an element there of you know, what needs to stay and what can go, but also a lot of colour theory, you could say, came into that, which is something I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the psychological aspects of design, and that's something that, you know, came into play once I got into uni. I understood it wasn't just that I liked working with colours and that was maybe a thing for me, but I also enjoyed, you know, how they made people feel or how they subconsciously like impacted our brain and how we are affected by design choices that we don't actually notice every day, but they are there subconsciously. And for my graded unit in interior design, I actually done my project on designing for autism, which I do not do healthcare design, so I don't actually know why I picked that, but that's what I did. And what we had to do was you had to go out and find your own listed building. So I used the Saltcoats Town Hall, so I managed to get the floor plans for that off the council. So that was kind of like you had to have floor plans, so I went to North Ayrshire Council, got the plans for that. Then I went out to the Saltcoats Town Hall and done like a site survey, and there took photos and things like that. So my graded unit was designing for autism. So this was, you know, wasn't a real brief, but there was a brief for it. So it was about creating a space, a retreat for families who have children with autism or, you know, something similar on the spectrum, and a place for them to retreat to and spend time together and connect with other families. And this really took me down a journey of how does design affect different people, and sensory issues came into a big play here. So a lot of the design we were doing came back down to the colours that we were using or the textures, and how that might affect somebody. And also like wayfinding was a big thing here. So there was like a lot of research I did on case studies of other healthcare centres, you know, across the world really. There was a lot in America that came up. So not like no sharp corners, curved walls, even just like going back to this living complexes. It wasn't just like a hotel room in there. There was kind of like family suites, and also how noise travelled between the areas and how families could come together in spaces, but there was also breakout zones for if MD needed a bit of downtime as well. So there's so much to play in there, but that again honed back into how people use a space. and how colour affects that and textures, and wayfinding was a really big thing here, which I feel like I picked up on. So even though the topic was designing for autism, and I learned a lot about that, even though I don't really do specifically healthcare design anymore, I still, took a lot away from that project. I actually still have the sketchbooks for it. I'm holding my, college and uni sketchbooks as if I'll ever need them again, which I probably won't, but I feel like I can't chuck them out because there's literally like years of work in there. So right now they're just collecting dust, but I'll maybe try and get some out. Because they are quite interesting. I actually love sketchbook work as well, and I still use sketchbooks just now for, I'm using sketchbooks in my own projects and clients' projects because I really love that kind of concept development phase. So that was uni, graduated, so I ended up getting my BA Honours in Interior Architecture Design. And from that, then I actually got a job pretty quickly in the design industry. It didn't really take me long from the time I graduated to getting a job and going out there and earning some money doing it. So the first job I got was at a kitchen place. So this was Creative Designs in Ayr. I actually got the job just by a fluke, to be honest. It turns out that they were actually hiring for somebody. It wasn't actually somebody in the design side, it was in the procurement, so putting the kitchen orders in, and it was on like Indeed or something like that, and I didn't see that. I was literally just, had the CV. We had to write a CV as part of uni, so I had it ready, and I was literally just design Ayrshire, Google, ping, ping, ping. And mine just seemed to ping to them at the time that they were actually hiring. So I got a phone call from the owner. They asked me to come in the next day, and I got the job. So that was really good. And then I started working there. So again, they weren't actually hiring for a designer, but because I had that design aspect, maybe that's why I got it. But I started off in their office. So I was doing the procurement side. So when a kitchen order came in, or they were pricing things up, I was doing basically the ordering from the catalogue. They used their own software as well, so they actually sent me down to England to learn the software that they used, and to be honest, I picked it up pretty quickly because, like I said, I really enjoyed the software work as well. And then I think because I did pick it up quite quickly, they then started to move me onto kitchen design work. So I was doing a bit of both, but it did eventually end up just being the kitchen work. So at Creative Designs, they done like private residential kitchens, really high spec, and they also done all the kitchen designs for like new build developments, and that was the kind of area that I was brought into. So we were designing kitchens for like Cala Homes, so in that kind of place you have your house types A to E. So that was good. And then I also got the opportunity to sit in on like briefings with private developers who are maybe building like 6 to 8 to 10 private homes for their kitchens. So I got a good bit of experience in that as well. So that was all going well there. And then of course COVID happened and lockdown happened, and everything just seemed to change from me. I thought I was, going into this career driven, starting my design work in, I wouldn't call it corporate, but like in working for firms and studios, and then that all just came to an end really when I got put on furlough. So 2020 was a really hard year for me. I went through a lot personally. So after I went on furlough, a few months after that, my mum died. She was really sick for months before, so actually being off, I was then able to kind of look after her. And after she passed away, I was 23 at the time, and I didn't really know if I wanted to go back to work after that. I kind of sat on it for about a month, and then I phoned them up and I'd said, like, I don't think it's right for me to come back. It just felt like the wrong time to be trying to build a career when, I hadn't really been there for long enough to have real like deep relationships with them. And after everything that happened with my mum, I just kind of felt like maybe there was a different path for me. So to be transparent about this, when she passed away, I did inherit a property, so I had a bit of rental income coming in, and it kind of nearly matched the wage that I was getting as a very start-up in the design world. So it made sense for me just to leave and see what I could do. But I think the entrepreneurial spark in me kind of started around this time as well. So during COVID, I started a wee hobby business. I call it the wee hobby business. So this was designing like digital art prints. That was kind of on a boom at the time. And I really dived into that. I think again, like dealing with my mum at the time, I needed that creative outlet and I wasn't, at work. So I had that time to go back into myself and explore different creative avenues. So I was doing a lot of like Procreate work. So that's like a wee iPad software. I was doing like pet portraits. I was doing any type of portrait, logo design, just anything that like, if people inquired, I would just kind of do it really cheap as well. And I made my Instagram page, and it actually originally started as Lawson's Logos. That was my initial startup, probably like 6 years to this month, because I actually seen it on my Time Hop recently. So I started doing that, and then I think when I started that as well, I kind of felt, I spoke to a couple of people and I was like, should I actually go back to work or should I just do this? Like, it wasn't like earning really any money, but I felt like I just wanted to pour my time into it and see where it could go. And obviously I had a bit of rental income there to support me as well. So I think over that kind of next 2 years, I just went on more of like a self-discovery journey. Like I was doing the prints, I went to a couple of stalls. My first stall, I actually lost money because the stall fee to set up all my printwear work and all that, and I made one sale and it was to my friend. So I lost money, but I actually gained an experience. So that's okay. I think at the time you're like, oh my God, this is terrible, and now you're just like, whatever. But it really started my entrepreneurial journey there, you could say. I started then doing like home prints as well, so I was trying to think about how I could bring design into it. So I was doing like prints for your home. I actually brought out a collection and it was like Ayrshire art. So my own photographs like of Irvine Beach and things like that. And turned them into prints, and then once I started doing them, they started to do really well at the stalls and online as well locally, and that really related back. That was a collection I actually launched like in honour of my mum because she was really outdoorsy. So I started kind of doing hills and things like that at the time, and that self-discovery. So I was taking these nice photos and then I was turning them into art. So that was really like where I kind of started to. It wasn't really like a big business. It was more like a hobby business. But I started to learn things like just like general things like messaging people, like kind of invoicing, and like I can't remember what else was involved there. Just like general business stuff, to be honest. And that developed into, moved away from Lawson's Logos, and it was called Art from the Attic. So that was like my first business properly online, that if people have followed me for kind of a while or since the beginning, they would probably remember that. So it was Art from the Attic. I was going out to stalls, I was doing my things under that name. I started talking more on social media at this point on what I was doing, and yeah, that was just kind of like, it was ticking over and I was doing things, but again I was starting to get bogged down by the online listings of the photos and like quality of paper and ink and all things like that. And I eventually was just like, what am I actually doing? Like there had to come a tipping point of, do I want to bring this to the next level and get it into places, or do I want to try and pursue something else? And that's when I was kind of like I actually do want to be an interior designer. Like I feel like I've dedicated a lot of my young life to wanting to be that. And this was like maybe 2023 time that I eventually was like, I think it's actually time that I started doing this again. So it'd been a few years, since COVID and everything that happened during that time. And I felt in a much better place in myself. Like I kind of grew up a wee bit to start. Like I think that's a big thing, just like life experience. I found myself a bit more, and then I decided like I actually want to do the interiors. So I had my business Art from the Attic. It was actually called that because my office was in the loft. So that kind of came from that. And from that, my business, Afta, was born. So Afta is actually an abbreviation of Art from the Attic. And I like to think of it now as the big sister to the little sister. Like Afta's kind of taken everything from that wee hobby business and turning it into like the big real life business, and that's the way I like to kind of think about it. So when I started off doing Afta, like I did have kitchen design experience and I had my degree, so a lot of experience there, but then I hadn't actually done it for a couple of years. So I really started quite nervous, I suppose, like not being in the industry for too long, but I just had this like passion inside me. Like I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and my kind of motto since I started has always been like there's no plan B, like it has to work. And I kind of think that's how most businesses start out. Like you have to be a little bit naive, maybe a little bit cocky as well, that you just know that big things are going to happen. So yeah, I actually started, I didn't really just go into the interior stuff. I still had the prints on the side, and I remember I put this little tiny thing on the website just to say, like, by the way, I actually do interior design as well. And a local business reached out to me and asked if I could do their place. So that was my first project, my first paying project. And I went out there and done the design for them. And that was really good. I was really nervous. I actually knew the guy, so that was a little bit easier. But I was still looking back. I'm like, the design was actually really good because I done like a few options and he chose a wild card and it was really great. So if anybody wants to see it, it's right down in the Instagram page is the first project. But that was really good, and I actually done my own painting on it as well because like I actually had literally zero network. I didn't know trades. I didn't know really like other designers or aimed in the design industry. As I said, I was like new and fresh, and I just got this job, and I didn't understand like outsourcing either. Like you don't actually like now. I wouldn't paint somebody's space. I'd get something to do it, obviously, but back then I didn't really know that. And actually, so this was it was a sports massage job. And then one of his clients has his own business, and then he seen the space, and then he messaged me and was like, can you come out and do ours as well? So as I said, I was just so nervous at the start. I think because I didn't know this person, I took a wee while to get back to them, and then my first client messaged me and was like, oh, he said you've not got back to him, like, do you want me to help you here? And then I was a bit like, oh, I need to just like, you know, I'm asking for work to come in, and then when it came in I was a bit like, oh my god. So then I ended up getting that job as well, going out and done their so this was a timber factory, and we done like a commercial kind of like stairwell and boardroom. So the brief behind that was like, you know, they have people coming in, other contractors, and it's about setting that first impression from the get-go. And that was really brief focused. We done prints as well for them as well, because I was still doing my prints at the time. And that was another just really great project. So I actually started my business in commercial, you could say, like independent commercial, which is something that I still really love to do. And then from that, it just kind of ticked over. So like, I'm not saying it's been steady, like there's definitely been dips. I suppose in like what they don't teach you in design school is like, yes, you can be an interior designer, but you don't know how to run a business. So that was like a big learning curve for me. And actually once I got into the business side of things and started actually after interiors, that's when I decided that like I don't think I could do it alone. I was really interested in the business. Like I'd learned a lot about socials and things through doing the prints, but now it was getting more serious. There's a lot more like responsibility involved when you're dealing with interior design, because you're dealing with like people's spaces. They're investing more budget into it, like planning for longevity. So there's just like loads of aspects here that like I didn't really know too much about before. So a big thing for me, which I think has really like spurted my growth, you could say, maybe not to extreme levels, but I very early on in my business decided to invest in mentorship. So I'd say like ever since kind of lockdown and my path changing, I've always been really delved into self-discovery and self-development. Like I've done a lot of that work on myself anyway. I'm really an aware person, I would say. Like I'm aware of why things are happening, and like that comes maybe from a place of curiosity, but I'm also very curious on different aspects that happen in the design industry as well. So, and where do I fit into the design industry, because that's been a big thing for me, and how do I overcome that? And it's not really about fitting in, but you know, it's your business and you can create it for yourself essentially. So investing in mentorship early on was definitely, I really like, it's a move that I don't regret. I really think that was the right move for me. And the ones that I chose to invest in as well were ones where people were kind of already established. They were already like doing better, because for me, my, you know, really big problems were, well, they're wee problems, and I found that really beneficial. Like I remember I used to like kind of go into the groups and panicking about something, and they would just be like, yeah, you just do this. But for me it was like a first time experience, so I didn't like know what to do. So just having like people's kind of other expertise on the business. I also loved my coach as well, Angela and Stephen, and I feel like I could really relate to them because they had trades businesses, so they actually knew what I was going through, as opposed to just working with like any type of mentorship. And then she actually came to become like a client of mine as well. So that was really good getting to work with them. So I dived kind of in and out of mentorship like the first couple of years. Different kind of one-off stuff and group things. And at a time where that kind of came to an end, I actually just felt ready to go out on my own anyway. Like I felt like I kind of knew like what I was doing, but now I just had to do it. But the massive growth spurt for me has definitely been over the past year to get me to where I am now. So a few things that have happened over the past year, and just over that, is I decided to sell my house and move back into my childhood home. I think this isn't a, you know, obviously there's a renovation that comes with that, but that's more of a personal journey. Like I felt like everything in my life had moved on since 2020, except I was still living in the same house, and it was like the only tie left, and I was ready to release that. You know, it was maybe a comfort blanket at the time, and eventually, you know, outgrew the space, and that was such a big move for me because it was one that, you know, I lived there with my mum and like, you know, our family dog and things like that. So leaving there was a big choice, but actually I remember like leaving and, you know, handing over the keys and that, and just thinking like right, we've done it, like now I can kind of be free. And actually I moved back into my childhood home anyway, which kind of feels like I still have that, like she's there that way, but I don't actually remember living there like with her and my dad because they were together there. I don't really remember it, so it's kind of different. It feels like a fresh home rather than moving back, but at the same time it feels like just safe, and it's like a really lovely place to be. And you know, where am I going to kind of have the next chapter of my life with my partner and like our future kind of family and things like that. So that kind of prompted the move. But on that, we also have taken on a big renovation. So I literally fast tracked every single thing that I was unsure of about the interior design industry, because I dived into my own project. Started managing my own trades, had to pay for everything, had to design everything. So literally all these home people that are coming to me for help, I could just relate like so much more through this life experience. And that's something that's really, you know, came through, and it's why I focus on not just the design but the install phase now, because I've literally just been through it and I have this experience in that way. So yeah, right now our renovation is still ongoing. We've been literally so busy with other people's projects right now, which is amazing as well. And over the past 6 months, I've just worked on so many stuff, different projects, like a range of commercial and home interiors. But I think for this year, like for 2026, like for my journey, and the journey of Afta and where it's going to become. It's just like continuing on creating a business for me and for the life that I want and my family, and not just because that's what you see online. Like, interiors is a very visual focused and Instagrammy and clickbaity world, and like it's all just for show, to be honest. Like, there's so much more that goes on to the background of that, and for me it's, you know, I love the interior side and the creative outlet, and it's like I said, it's something that's always been there for me, but I'm also focusing on how do we make this like just a great business, like a business where clients love to work with us, but I also enjoy working with them as well, like, because that's where a lot of time and energy and focus is going. So it needs to be working. We need to be having a great output, and we need to be, you know, meeting clients' briefs and attracting the right clients as well. Because like I said, back in college, you have 25 people working from the same brief, but everybody's ideas come out different. So we're really not really honing in our skill in a specific style, but the way we do things, and like creating a design process where clients really love to work with us in that way. So that's my big focus for this year. That comes down to the types of services that I now offer, where you know, we've had our couple of years of testing services and what works and what doesn't, and what I like doing and what I don't, and now we're stripping that back into services that we enjoy working on, we've actually seen results from, that clients like, because you need to obviously come with the waves as well. We're in a very like DIY period, and clients want this and clients want that, but clients also want to expect more as well from their homes. So even though I don't think we fit into the DIY kind of niche, we do fit into like providing the extra details and design that clients want to pay for and they want to experience in their houses as well, and commercial, of course. So that is a big focus in terms of design for Afta this year. But of course, Afta is no longer just Afta Interiors. We have a umbrella, you could say. That's what I like to think of it. So I'm also focusing on my own personal brand at the moment. So I have my ashley.afta page. This is, you know, like I said, I'm really curious about the business side and what's working there, and sharing my own experience as well. I'd say I'm quite honest about what I'm going through and keeping people up to date online. So that's a place where I can share this kind of knowledge and what I'm working on. And then we obviously have the podcast as well, which if you're listening right now, I hope you're really enjoying. So this is Abode with Afta, and the podcast is again, I think I could probably go into a completely different episode about why I wanted to do that. But again, it's about growing the network. It's about sharing my expertise with interiors in longer form content rather than just the short bite-sized clickbait that we see everywhere else. So that's another strand. And then, of course, last month we also did our panel event. So that was a night with Afta. So it's very early doors on that. I am not going to give anything away about where it's going. But I would say that I think it will return maybe one day. So that is basically how I got to where I am now. So there's a lot involved. And yeah, keep following, I suppose, to hear the rest of the story. I feel like I'm just getting started, because obviously you get to one point, and you know, I'm where I once always dreamed of, and then your dreams just get bigger, and your life changes and your lifestyle, and you have different experiences. So I suppose Afta will just grow as I do. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that and had a little bit of insight into my life. I feel like I've kind of shared all that's came to mind. I tried not to script this one too much because it is my own personal experience. So yeah, I hope you really enjoyed that and got to know me a little bit better and my experience in the design industry. And also, like, it's actually helped me reflect there, like looking back in college and uni, and there is things that I have really taken from there that I still use today. So I do think it was a really valuable period in my life. And yeah, if you would actually like to find out more about the services and how you can work with us, then drop us a DM on any one of our pages and we'll be in touch to see how we can help you in your space. So yeah, that's all from me today, I think, but I will see you in the next one.